Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack a huge, and I mean massive, problem with the way most of us are actually taught to learn. We'll be looking at why passive studying so often totally fails us out there in the real world and exactly how to fix it. I mean, have you ever felt like you were studying so hard, putting in all the hours, only to completely freeze up when it was time to actually perform? Well, trust me, you are definitely not alone.
Today, we are extracting the absolute core insights from a truly fantastic book, Ultra Learning by Scott H. Young. Specifically, we're going to laser focus entirely on Chapter 6. This chapter covers a game-changing concept called Principle 3, Directness, Go Straight Ahead. We are going to distill this chapter down into a highly actionable framework that you can use to master pretty much any hard skill, outsmart your competition, and really put your career on the fast track.
All right, let's just dive right into our roadmap. We'll hit 1, the illusion of progress, then 2, education's dirty secret, 3, the principle of directness, 4, tactics 1 and 2, projects and immersion, 5, tactics 3 and 4, simulation and overkill, and finally, 6, embrace the discomfort. Okay, Section 1, the illusion of progress. Let me pose a question to you. Have you ever felt this massive surge of progress using a really fun learning app on your phone, but then you freeze in utter panic when you try to use that exact skill in real life? It's incredibly common, and it happens because we're often building the completely wrong portfolio of skills. Like James Clear points out in the foreword of this book, there's a fundamental difference between learning something new and actually practicing it. Passive learning? That creates knowledge, but active practice? That is what creates skill. You could literally read all the best-selling sales books in the world or sit there watching endless videos on the perfect bench press technique. But at the end of the day, reading a sales book isn't going to get you customers. Only making real sales calls will do that. And watching a video won't build your strength. Only actually lifting the weights will.
And this brings us to a super popular example, language learning apps. Think about things like Duolingo. On the surface, they're colorful, they're a lot of fun, and they give you this really potent sense of progress. But let's look at what you are actually doing on the screen. You get an English sentence, and you just pick matching words from a limited multiple-choice word bank. Real conversation is cognitively a completely different beast. Out in the real world, nobody hands you a multiple-choice word bank. You have to dredge up the actual words from your memory on the fly. So picking words from an app creates this illusion of progress simply because the cognitive task doesn't actually match the real world.
Moving on to Section 2, education's dirty secret.
Now, this frustration we're talking about, it isn't just a quirky app problem. It stems directly from a deep structural problem with how we are taught to learn in traditional schooling. Over in educational psychology, there's this concept called transfer. Transfer means learning something in one context, say a high school classroom, and being able to successfully use it in a totally different context, like your actual day job. Transfer is basically considered the absolute holy grail of education. I mean, if we can't transfer what we learn, then what's the point of learning it in the first place? Yet, formal schooling struggles immensely to actually achieve this.
In fact, it struggles so much that psychologist Robert Haskell, after reviewing the vast amount of literature on this exact topic, bluntly stated that our failure to achieve transfer over the past 9 decades is, and I quote, "without exaggeration, an education scandal." For over a century, the research has clearly shown that students frequently fail to apply classroom knowledge to actual real-world problems.
So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is why transfer fails. It fails because knowledge often gets kind of welded to the specific place or subject matter where it was first learned. On top of that, abstract environments, like your typical textbook or a multiple-choice test, they completely lack the myriad of tiny, messy details that you actually need for real-world application. Let's say you learn French entirely from flashcards. You're going to completely miss out on the subtle, vital skills needed to navigate a super fast-paced conversation in a noisy Parisian cafe. Traditional education relies way too heavily on indirect learning, basically just crossing its fingers and hoping the skills will magically transfer later. Spoiler alert, they rarely do.
Which brings us to Section 3, the principle of directness.
And here is our ultimate behavioral solution, the third principle of ultra learning, directness. Directness is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's the practice of learning by directly doing the actual thing you want to become good at, inextricably connected to the context in which the skills will eventually be used. Directness solves the whole transfer problem entirely by just cutting out the middleman. Instead of hoping that classroom theory somehow transfers over to real-world skill, you just force yourself to go straight ahead and do the actual thing you want to get good at, right from day one.
As Young points out,
Ultra-learners, these are the folks who take on extreme self-directed learning projects. They consistently tie their learning to the exact context of their end goal. This intense, laser focus on directness allows them to learn significantly faster. It literally lets them outsmart the competition who are stuck spinning their wheels in passive, indirect learning loops.
Let's look at Section 4, Tactics 1 and 2, Projects and Immersion.
So, how do we actually apply this idea of directness in our own lives? Well, the text outlines 4 specific tactics, and we'll start with the first 2 incredibly powerful methods. First, project-based learning. This means you organize your entire learning process around producing a tangible end product. Second is immersion. This means you completely surround yourself with the target skill and the environment where it naturally lives, forcing yourself to sink or swim and adapt.
Here is a picture-perfect example of project-based learning. Take Eric Barone. He didn't just sit back and passively take theoretical coding or digital art classes. No, he wanted to make a video game, so he directly learned game development, art, and music composition by undertaking the monumental project of creating his own hit video game entirely from scratch. He literally learned by doing the exact thing he wanted to master.
And for immersion, just look at Benny Lewis. He tackles learning new languages by completely avoiding the indirect route. He doesn't spend months agonizing over grammar workbooks. Instead, he forces himself into immediate, back-and-forth, immersive dialogue with native speakers starting on day 1. Is it incredibly difficult? Absolutely. But it transfers perfectly to his ultimate goal, which is having real, fluid conversations.
That brings us to Section 5, Tactics 3 and 4, Simulation and Overkill.
But wait, what happens when you simply cannot practice in the exact real-world environment? I mean, you can't always test your skills live on a massive stage or on national television right away, right? When the direct environment is inaccessible, these next 2 methods are absolute lifesavers. The flight simulator method allows you to mimic the specific cognitive demands of the real environment. And the overkill approach is all about purposefully placing yourself in an environment that's actually much harsher or more demanding than your ultimate goal.
Think about Roger Craig. He famously dominated the game show Jeopardy! Now, he obviously couldn't practice by going on the actual show hundreds of times, so he used the flight simulator method. He didn't just casually read random Wikipedia pages, he practiced using actual past Jeopardy! Questions. This ensured he was practicing the exact cognitive feature required, rapidly recalling answers based on those cryptic, classic Jeopardy!-style clues.
And then there's Tristan de Montebello, who took the overkill approach while preparing for the World Championship of Public Speaking. Instead of just practicing in front of polite, supportive public speaking clubs, he actually tested his speeches on middle school students. He knew their brutal honesty would provide much harsher, unfiltered feedback. I mean, if a joke fell flat, middle schoolers wouldn't just politely smile. They'd let him know instantly. By surviving that totally overkill environment, the actual championship became way less intimidating.
Finally, Section 6, Embrace the discomfort.
All right, let's be totally honest with each other here. Direct learning is undeniably harder. It's more frustrating, it's more sweat-inducing, and it's vastly more intense than just passively reading a book or mindlessly tapping your screen on some gamified app. But as Scott H. Young so perfectly puts it, the easiest way to learn directly is to simply spend a lot of time doing the thing you want to become good at. It sounds super obvious, right? But it is deeply, deeply uncomfortable. However, this willingness to face that frustration head-on is exactly your competitive advantage. Most people out there, they'll retreat to the comfort of an app or a textbook. The true ultra-learner stays right there in the discomfort of the real arena.
So, let's just do a quick look back at the roadmap we traveled today. 1. The illusion of progress. 2. Education's dirty secret. 3. The principle of directness. 4. Tactics 1 and 2, projects and immersion. 5. Tactics 3 and 4, simulation and overkill. And finally, 6. Embrace the discomfort. Now, I want to leave you with this final, rather provocative thought to chew on today. Take a really hard, honest look at your current study habits, whatever it is you're trying to learn right now. Are you actually practicing the real thing in the context you'll need it? Or are you just comfortably building the completely wrong portfolio of skills? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I seriously challenge you to go straight ahead and embrace directness in your very next learning project.